Okay, my name is Chris, and I want to do my own episode of Drunk History. I I want to tell the story of Buddha. So there's a lot that's not exactly historically verified. It's kind of it in myth and history. The lines are blurry. So okay, so the historical Buddha was born Siddhartha Gautama. His clan, I don't really know that much about Indian social life at the time, but they had clans. And he was a prince, and he was a member of the Shakya clan. That's why, many years later, we sometimes refer to him as Shakyamuni Buddha. So, he's a prince. He is in a palace. And when he's born, his parents receive this prophecy. They have like a fortune teller or whatever come in, talk about the baby. And the fortune teller says to the king, and maybe other people in the room too, hey, this baby is destined to either be one of the greatest military and political minds ever, or one of the greatest spiritual teachers ever. And so Buddha's dad is like, I want my son to be a freaking king of all kings, and he's going to be like the best ruler ever. And so what he does is he tries to shield his son from anything deep, anything like that would make him want to be a spiritual teacher. And so he gives him, like all the best food. He keeps him in the palace all the time. Sort of doesn't let him out ever. So he's got these beautiful gardens. He's got beautiful girls. He gets his teenage years. He gets to have all the sex he wants. Anything he wants, he gets. He's just spoiled rotten. Because his dad is like, if I do this, he'll be a king instead of a mendicant, which is like a form of a beggar, poor person on purpose for spirituality. I fucking love gin and tonic. Okay. So one day though, Buddha's like, well, Siddhartha is like, what's outside the walls? So he bribes the palace horse driver guy to take him outside. He's like, all right, take me outside. It's gonna be, I want to see what's out there. So the guy's like, all right. So he gets in the carriage or whatever, and they go out into the town, and here's where it gets kind of ritualistic, mythological. Buddha first sees a very, very old guy, and he'd never seen one before. He's like, whoa, what's up with that dude? And the horse driver guy's like, that's an old dude. That's what happens, later in life as you get old, and you look like that dude. Buddha's like, holy shit. So the next thing they saw that blew his mind was a very sick guy. He was, I don't know what exactly, probably like boils on his skin, and like he was throwing up and coughing, and like he was in bad shape because of sickness. So we got old age, now we got sickness, and Buddha's like, what the fuck? And the horse driver's like, that's a very sick guy. That's a thing that happens sometimes is people get sick. And Buddha's like, what? And so then the next thing they saw was a dead person. He saw a corpse, and he had like never seen a corpse before because his dad had sheltered him so badly this entire time. So he sees the corpse, and he's like, what the fuck's wrong with that person? The carriage driver's like, oh, that guy's dead. Yeah, you didn't know that? People die. Yeah, and then they don't, and then they're just that. They're dead, they're corpse. Buddha's like, fuck. Then he sees a spiritual guy, like a holy man, a spiritual practitioner of some kind, just sort of like doing this thing. And Buddha's like, what's that dude doing? And the carriage driver's like, oh, he's trying to seek, enlightenment or whatever. And Buddha's like, I want to do that. So, now at this point in the story, Siddhartha has a wife who may have been his cousin, which is okay back then. It's very Targaryen. But so he and his cousin are married, and they've got a kid. And Buddha's like, sorry, Siddhartha's like, he's not the Buddha yet. Siddhartha says, honey, I'm going to go off now, and I'm going to learn spiritual things. You stay here with the baby. You'll be fine. I'm going to go now. And so he goes off. And he pretty much tries anything he can find. He finds a spiritual teacher. He starts studying with them. They're like, here's my deal. And he's like, all right, I'm studying your deal. And he studies his deal, and he's like, okay, but then, all right, I got it. And they're like, yeah, you got it. And he's like, but that doesn't answer my question. It's like, what's up with human suffering? What's up with that? Like, what the fuck? And they're like, oh, well, all right. I thought, well, you didn't like my thing, whatever. And so he goes to another spiritual teacher, same thing. He tries their thing. He masters it, and still doesn't answer his question. What the fuck is up with human suffering? So, eventually he ends up with a group of guys in the forest, and they're going crazy with like the like most extreme forms of self-mortification you can imagine. Like they're sleeping on spikes, and they're starving themselves because they're trying to escape the physical world, and they believe that this is going to like lead them to some sort of like new spiritual understanding or whatever. And so according to the traditional story, at some point Buddha was like living on a grain of rice a day, and he was so skinny you could see his rib cage. No, you could see his spine poking out his stomach skin. Anyways, I don't think that's literally true, but you know, it's a very old story, so sometimes there's embellishments. Anyways, Siddhartha is going nowhere with this. He's like, I've been starving myself, I've been sleeping on spikes. I don't have any answers to my question. What the fuck's up with human suffering? But you know, I think I can do something else. So he's hanging out at a river, and this like maiden from the village nearby comes upon him and sees like, holy shit, you're starving. I have some milk and honey. Would you like some? And he's like, yes, please. So he accepts it. And the guys he'd been hanging out with were like, oh, fuck you. You sold out, piece of shit. We're not going to hang out with you anymore because you are losing it. You're not sticking true to the way that we were doing here in the forest. So go fuck yourself. But he drinks milk and honey from the maiden. And then he's like, I remember way back when I was a little kid. I was hanging out, and there was a tree, and I was sitting under the tree, and I just had this like really like super profound calmness that I was feeling. I think if I find a nice tree and I sit there, I'm going to figure it out, or so help me, gods, many of them. So he finds a tree, and it's called the Bodhi tree. I don't think it was called that at the time, but that's what it's called in retrospect, because Bodhi means wisdom. So he sits under this tree. He's like, I am not getting up until I have enlightenment, and I understand human suffering, and what's the fuck up with that. So he does. He sits there all night. See, it only takes him a night. Sometimes it takes other people longer, but he was Buddha, so he gets a better deal. So he's freaking sitting there all night, and Mara, the tempter, comes. And so I think that it makes way more pertinent sense, way more pragmatic sense if we were to consider Mara as our own minds, because we're all our own worst enemy, right? Like, we got demons, each and every one of us. They're us. Our demons are us. So Mara is Siddhartha. but in this context, we're going to discuss it as like sort of a being outside himself, because it makes a better story. So Mara comes to the Buddha and he's like, "Hey, look at these chicks. They're hot, right? You want to fuck them?" He's like, "Nah." So Mara's like, "Oh, it's very, very similar to the whole Jesus in the desert thing. It's almost like it's an archetype. Like, what?" So, but anyways, so Mara's tempting him. And then finally, Mara's like, "Who are you? Why do you think you're so special that you get, why should you, all right, here it goes. It goes, by what authority should you get enlightened or whatever?" And Buddha touches the ground, and the ground shakes, and Mara disappears. And then it's dawn is almost happening, and Buddha looks up at the morning star, and he fucking gets it. And he sits there for a while, and he's like, "What should I do? There's no way anyone would ever listen to me if I tried to tell them what I just understood. But damn it, I have to try." So he leaves where he's at, and he finds the people that he was with. They're the first people he encounters. And he's like, "Oh, this fucking guy. This fucking milk and honey drinking motherfucker. What do you want?" And he's like, "Guys, suffering. There's a cause of suffering." There's a cause of suffering. So suffering's a thing. It's the Four Noble Truth speech. Suffering is a thing. There's a cause. There's a way to end it. And the way to end it is as follows. And then the way to end it is the Eightfold Noble Path, which is right speech, right thought, right action, right livelihood, right. Just do everything right and you won't suffer. It's cool. That's basically it. And the guys are like, "Oh my God, we get it. It's way better than torturing ourselves." And so they're like converts. They're the first Buddhist monks, because they're the first people he talks to, that he preaches to, and they're on board. And so they join him, and so they're the first Buddhist monks. How cool is that? And so he goes forth, and he starts teaching everyone he can, anyone who listen, about like, we got this human life. It's a rare and precious thing. Yeah, there's suffering, and there's pain, but then there's also stuff that we don't have to deal with that, and it's all ego, and be a light unto yourself, and everyone's got the necessary. Everyone can figure it out. You don't have to. There's nothing. Are you a human? Are you human? Then you can fucking figure it out for yourself. You can do it. Just fucking, maybe not sit on a tree, but like sit and it just bubbles up, and you're like, "Oh, right." And then many generations of teachers later, and you get shit like the Zen people in China, and it's like, what's the greatest teaching of Buddhism? And it's like, do good. Avoid bad things. And they're like, well, that's fucking so simple. Even a 3-year-old would be able to say that. And they're like, yeah, a 3-year-old could say it, but even men of 80 or more can't even do it. So that's sort of Buddhism in a nutshell. Just do good things and stop doing bad things, and you'll suffer less, and it's just better because we're all one. So if you're hurting another person, you're basically hurting yourself. Don't shit in the swimming pool is essentially the teaching of Buddhism. Because if you shit in this, we're all in this, like, life is a swimming pool, right? And if you are shitty, then it's like you're taking a shit in the swimming pool, and that is making the swimming pool shitty, and you're gonna have to deal with that. No one is in a vacuum. No one exists unto themselves. Everything is connected, and everything is interdependent on each other. So once you shit in the swimming pool, you're shitting on yourself in a way. So don't do that. It's first of all, it's lame for other people that you're involving, but also just in a strictly pragmatic sense, you're fucking shit up for yourself. Ultimately, anyways, that all started with Siddhartha Gautama, the Shakyamuni Buddha.